5 years ago, I was miserable, working a 9 to 5 that made me money, but honestly, every day I would wake up dreading to go to work. Commuting over 3 hours every single day, enduring the harsh Canadian winters that made me pretty much feel depressed all the time. Meanwhile, I saw a ton of my college friends start to build their own businesses and travel around the world as they were working remotely. I would see them documenting their motorcycle trips in Thailand and enjoying epic parties in Medellin and relaxing on the beach in Brazil, while I was at home, jealous, building someone else's dream and wealth, hated my social life, hated my dating life, and everything about me just felt stagnant. So that's actually when I quit. I left my 6-figure sales job and decided to risk it. Fast forward to today, I'm a full-time digital nomad. I typically live in different countries for 3 to 6 months at a time, and as I'm recording this, I'm actually living in Cape Town, South Africa. And before that, I was spending time in Brazil, Thailand, Colombia, Mexico, even Poland. So today, I wanna share with you all of the lessons I've learned by going all in on my business. Lessons about building financial freedom, about travel and working at the same time while still being productive, about making lifelong friendships and learning skills along the way as well. So if you're also trying to build your own online business and travel at the same time, then I know this is gonna be insightful for you. All right, so I have to confess, the first few months of this journey was incredibly painful. In the first 3 months, I was able to only close one client for $1,000. Granted, I was able to get that first client in the first 48 hours of my business, which is pretty crazy, but it took like another 90 days before I got my second one. I actually do have a video right here that does talk about how I got my first customer, so it certainly isn't impossible even if you have no website or no experience or no testimonials, but yeah, it was not an easy process necessarily. And I was bleeding money, right? Which wasn't super fun, given that I was accustomed to making 6 figures at my previous sales job. So here's why those first couple months was so friggin' hard. And specifically what I sucked at, which led to this being the case. When I began my business, I didn't really know what it was that I was selling. I had an idea of what I wanted to sell. It was gonna be something about sales marketing. And I also had an idea of who I wanted to sell to, which was software businesses, because that's where I had worked for like 7 years of my career up to that point. But it was still pretty broad. I was still playing around with a lot of different ideas as to what I wanted to offer and who I wanted to work with. And because in the first couple months, I kept on flip-flopping and being indecisive of exactly who I wanted to go after, it led to a bunch of wastage. If I had been more decisive on picking the specific audience and offer that I wanted to serve, I probably would have gotten to the results that I wanted to get to much quicker. The second thing that I just kind of sucked at this early stage was that I didn't really know how to market myself yet. Marketing was never actually my job at the prior companies that I had worked for. It was always more so in sales and business development. So yes, at first I was able to actually get a ton of sales calls booked in the calendar because I was good at just sending out LinkedIn outreach and email outreach. But in terms of actually creating a marketing strategy to get any sort of inbound leads or to get people to trust me more, that was just something that I had to learn by failing and watching YouTube videos and buying courses. And it probably wasn't until 6 months into my business that I really figured out this side of things. And the third thing that I was bad at was I didn't really have a structure to my day. And it's so important that as an entrepreneur, you're super organized because frankly, as an entrepreneur, you're wearing a ton of different hats. Sales, marketing, customer fulfillment, accounting, literally everything. And back then, since I wasn't really an entrepreneur, I didn't really have an organized to-do list. I was just kind of like doing a bunch of random things at random times. And if I think back now, if there was more structure into how I organized my day, if I was really, really precise with my to-do lists and my calendar, I probably could have gotten all those things done in like half the time. So that's why it's important to prioritize, right? Like identify what matters to you right now and then organize it and prioritize it in your calendar so you get those things done and that you're not trying to multitask and do a bunch of things at the same time because that typically tanks your overall efficiency and output. So if I was to go back in time, what I would have done is I would have actually focused in the beginning just on business development and nothing else. Just get in front of people with my outreach, try to get as many sales calls booked in the calendar and close some deals. From there, once I had a solid base, I would start thinking about marketing. How can I build a website? How could I actually make sure that I'm creating content which could make it easier for people to trust me and know me? But I would have done these things one step at a time, and I would have been super intentional about how I did this instead of trying to do everything at once with no order. So despite these things that I kind of sucked at, in the first couple months, I was able to close a couple clients. I was able to make some money. I was able to book a bunch of sales calls. And certainly after the third month of me being in business, I started to see this exponential growth up because things were starting to fall into place. One of the reasons why I was also able to have this inflection point was because at this stage, I did start to invest in my business more. I joined a coaching program, spent $7,500, and not only was this beneficial because I learned a lot about entrepreneurship from the program, me letting go of that $7,500 actually proved to me that I was serious about it. It was almost as though I burned the ships. Now I had no choice. There was no plan B. I spent the money, I had to make this work. And from that point on, I actually doubled down and worked so much harder. So I really do value that investment that I made in that program. And really, the 5 to 6 months after I made that step, my business really blew up. From November 19th to March 2020, so literally in the span of 5 months, I was able to go from very little revenue per month to over $30,000 per month. So the question is, how did this actually happen? The first is that I solved marketing and lead generation. The first couple months, I was really just leaning on LinkedIn, and I was able to claw my way to closing like a handful of deals. I was able to get to 5K per month. But from that time span of November 2019 to March 2020, I solved marketing on Facebook. I went into Facebook groups. I was able to figure out content, community building, booking meetings in the DMs. Once I did this, I was able to generate over 15 meetings a week. And the math is clear, right? The more meetings you are able to book, the more deals you can close. The second thing that I was able to massively improve on at this stage was that I made my offer a lot better. Because at first, I was really just trading time for money. My initial clients, I would pretty much just meet with them every single week, and I would do consulting sessions with them. It was not very scalable because it was 100% dependent on how much time I was spending with them. At this half-year mark, I had changed my offer completely. Instead of just doing a bunch of one-on-one coaching calls, I had built out a course and an info product. I did also group coaching calls, which is inherently more scalable. And instead of charging $1,000 a month with no contracts or guaranteed length of time of commitment, I started selling people packages upfront where I was able to collect between $4,000 to even $8,000 immediately. Not only was the offer more scalable, but I was able to charge more. And all of this allowed me to scale to a much higher monthly revenue. And the third thing that happened during this phase, which really helped, was that I just started to believe in myself a lot more. Even though in the first few months, I was able to have a few small victories, I wasn't certain that I was gonna succeed yet. And if I didn't really believe in myself, I wasn't gonna succeed. But the following 5 to 6 months, when I started getting some wins and accumulating more experience, I started to believe in myself. Like that scene in The Matrix where Morpheus says to Neo,
"He's beginning to believe."
And that momentum carried me through, and I started executing with more ferocity. I started investing even more into my business because I believed that could make an ROI. So this includes softwares or additional courses or even hiring employees. And certainly once I started seeing our clients having a ton of wins and success stories, that made me feel as though, wow, I'm really adding massive value to the world, and I gotta continue doing this. And that's when I doubled down to my business and went full monk mode, grinding harder than I ever have in my life. But this is really where a ton of my success came from. So at this stage, I was consistently doing 10, 20, 30K months, and it's because of the fact that I had solved lead generation, I had an offer that people really loved and was willing to spend a lot of money for, and I was pretty willing to grind and work my face off. At this stage, the business is going pretty well, but there were some problems that existed within my company. And the major problem was actually that I was overworking myself and I was doing everything alone, essentially running my business as a solopreneur. And even though I was willing to put in a lot of effort, there comes a point where if you're working 80 to 100 hours a week, you're going to burn out. And that's more or less what happened. I would say between March, April, and May of 2020, I was hitting a breaking point both physically and emotionally, and I just couldn't take it anymore. Because I was taking care of everything, right? I was doing sales calls, I was booking meetings, I was managing customer fulfillment, accounting and finance, everything was on my plate. So the next 8 months of my business was all about me trying to figure out how to not just be a one-man show. After all, all, no successful company is a one-man show. In fact, all organizations that are truly creating impact are based off of a team of people that are really working towards a common mission. So the next 8 months was really me growing my team, hiring lots of employees that could take on major roles in the organization, from appointment setters to closers to hiring managers who can even take over the hiring. I even brought on a business partner at one point. And this was when I started to feel as though, okay, I'm really a CEO now. Not just a solopreneur that's just trying to build his own project or his own side hustle as a hobby, but now I'm really a business owner. And not only did this allow me to generate significantly more income for myself, I was also working way less per week, which kept me sane, and I was able to generate more impact and actually do the things in the business that I wanted to do, the things that I enjoyed. Not just those menial, boring tasks that I used to have to slave away at, but things that were strategic and interesting and fun, such as building out new products and hiring additional team members that could really contribute to the vision. And truth is, from day one, I always knew that I wanted to travel. But it's really important that I didn't travel prematurely, because my fear was if I traveled too quickly before I had really cemented myself in the business, then as soon as I went to Mexico or Colombia, I would have too much fun and there would be too many distractions and I would eventually just have my business fall apart and fail. So despite me talking about all of these different stages of my company, I have to confess that I didn't actually start traveling until more than 1.5 years into my company. Because at this stage, I had already built a team, I had already delegated the majority of the tasks to someone else. I was pretty much only working 30 to 40 hours anyways, and I was confident that even if I stepped away for a couple weeks at a time, my business wouldn't take too much of a hit. So only in November of 2020, which is almost 1.5 years into my company, did I get that plane ticket and go to my first destination to live out my digital nomad dreams. And that destination was in Brazil. And I stayed there for 7 months, made some amazing friends who actually to this day are my closest confidants and the people that I trust most with, and not just learning about entrepreneurship, but also about friendship and relationship and travel. And like I had said before, I've now lived in Colombia, Poland, Thailand, Mexico. It's been nonstop traveling and living as a digital entrepreneur, building my business for 2.5 years. And yes, there's been a lot of ups and downs, but it's also been the most amazing experience I've ever had in my life. Not just for wealth, but also for learning. Because one of the things that I've really noticed about being a digital nomad is that it aggressively increases the rate at which you can pick up new skills and new experiences. Back when I was just living in Toronto, yes, I was working hard and my company was growing, but as a man, I wasn't necessarily evolving too much because my environment was the same. But when I started traveling, it allowed me to network so much with other entrepreneurs, and that actually allowed me to increase my rate of knowledge about entrepreneurship. I learned so much more about hiring and taxes and just having a great vision as an entrepreneur that if I didn't meet those other founders, I would have never been able to acquire those skills and that mindset just staying in Toronto. Because I was living in other countries, I was just more likely to try to take on new hobbies and learn new skills. When I was living in Brazil and Mexico, I had to learn Portuguese and Spanish to even function in their society. In Thailand, I was also able to take up volleyball and surfing as a skill because in certain countries, those sports were really popular, and definitely those things I would have never taken on if I was still living in Toronto because it's just not a big deal there. I was able to experience different cultures, meet new people around the world that taught me so much about their traditions and about their way of life, and I would honestly say that those experiences trump any of the wealth and income that I've built. I will remember the travel and the people that I've met along the way significantly more than the amount of zeros in my bank account. I truly believe that entrepreneurship mixed with travel makes it impossible for you to stagnate as a human being. 1 year of traveling and building a business, you can oftentimes experience more than in 5 years of normal life. And is it all perfect and roses? Of course not, right? Like with entrepreneurship, because of the fact that you are so invested in your business, the highs are really high, but the lows are also really low. I've gone through months and months of depression because my business was failing, and that stuff had a larger emotional toll on me than at any point during me just working a 9 to 5. Because yes, a 9 to 5 might sometimes be boring and annoying and frustrating, but since I'm not so emotionally invested in having a job, I never really go home feeling incredibly stressed out about it. But I can never go home and not feel stressed out about my own company when my own company is struggling, right? So you have to take the good with the bad as well. But overall, I don't regret anything that I've done in these last couple years of entrepreneurship, and I still believe that it's the best thing that I've ever done for myself. And maybe for you, it might be as well if you're willing to give it a proper, solid go. So with that being said, hopefully this was helpful or inspiring, whatever adjective you want to throw in there. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to try to scale up your business, whether it be in coaching, consulting, info product, or agency, definitely book a call with me below and I can give you some recommendations on how you can continue to scale. If not, that's cool too. I have a bunch of recommended videos right here that could talk about just how you can continue growing your business even if you don't directly talk to me. All right, so with that being said, hopefully I'll see you next time. Cheers.